Hello and welcome to the Employee Advocacy and Influence podcast. My name's Lewis Gray and I'm a marketing manager here at DSMN8. Right off the bat, my usual co-host Bradley Keenan won't be joining for today's episode as he is literally still at sea. And if you didn't catch that update in our last episode, Bradley is currently sailing around Europe. So needless to say, he's without Wi-Fi for, another week or so. But that said, we do have a special guest for this episode. So don't worry, you're not just going to be listening to me drone on for 15 minutes or so. So I just wanted to start today's episode with a reminder that we're in the process of producing a benchmark report on employee advocacy. We're looking to produce a whole new data set with insights and input from experts in the space. And on that note, we need your help to make this happen. So if you're involved in managing an employee advocacy program or participating in your company's program as an advocate, then we'd absolutely love to hear from you because, ultimately it's your unique experiences and insight that will shape this report. So to collect this data, we've produced a short survey, which we will link to in the show notes. It takes about 6 to 7 minutes to complete, but we've had hundreds of responses today, and the picture the data is starting to paint is a very interesting one, to say the least. Of course, if you're utilizing employee advocacy in any capacity, or even if you're just exploring the space, then we all stand to benefit from this research in some shape or form. But if that doesn't cut it for you, then it's worth noting that all respondees will have the chance to be featured in the report, and you'll also be entered into a draw to win one of five $100 Amazon vouchers. So, thank you in advance for your support and contributions, and a massive thank you to everybody who has shared their experiences with us so far. And with that, let's get into today's episode. So, I mentioned during the intro that we had a special guest for this episode. And if you watched the last episode, you'll remember that we introduced the very talented Emily Page Jones, who recently joined as our Director of Customer Success. And we asked Emily if there was anything that she'd like us to discuss following her own research and initial conversations with potential customers and our clients too. The episode was actually really positively received, and I don't mean to seem surprised, but we only did this as Emily was brilliant enough to step in at last minute because Bradley wasn't able to do the episode. But it was so well received, considering it was something so different to what we would normally do. So we decided to go again. But this time we reached out to the equally talented April Jones for some fresh insight. So April is an account exec here at Disseminate, and she is speaking daily with companies who are exploring employee advocacy. So we couldn't really think of a better place to find some fresh insight, or maybe even a pain point, or a misconception that we could tackle here on the podcast. But I'm rambling anyway. I'll hand over to April.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the DSMN8 podcast. I am always listening to podcasts in my spare time, and I've been waiting patiently for an invite to be involved in this podcast. So I'm happy the day has finally come. Firstly, to introduce myself, I'm April. I'm an account executive at DSMN8, and I specialise in helping companies launch and streamline their advocacy programs. On a lot of calls recently, people have asked the same question. How do we get the maximum number of employees involved in our program? For example, if a company is looking to utilize our platform for social selling, how do they encourage their sales teams to have that brand presence on LinkedIn? I always say that it's really important to communicate to those individuals in sales why having a brand presence is only going to benefit their end goal. Sharing thoughts, interesting content, and establishing your own brand will mean you're seen as that trusted advisor and that knowledgeable individual to your prospects and peers. Ultimately, though, the people just want to know and better understand how they communicate exactly how this benefits each employee, no matter what their role is. That being said, I'd love to hear your insight on this too. So, my question to you would be, beyond benefits for an organization, how can visibility across social media advance an individual's career? And I'm going to up the ante a little bit. I was hoping you could go one step beyond this and provide some tips that we can give to make posting on social media become a habit.
Yeah, expertly delivered. Thank you very much, April. So, full disclaimer, April ran a few ideas by me ahead of recording this episode. And when she mentioned the idea of talking about personal branding and building posting habits, I knew that this was the one that we had to do because I've heard this a few times when working with clients on case studies. So, clients have explained that one of their biggest pain points was effectively communicating the benefits of personal branding to their employees. Obviously, companies launch programs as a company initiative. So, shifting this perspective so that employees see it as an employee led initiative that benefits them personally is an integral part of getting your program off the ground. Your employees absolutely have to know what's in it for them. So we'll break the question into two parts, and that's how does employees' social media presence impact their career and personal goals, and how do you build a posting habit? And I guess before we can answer these questions, we need to touch on the importance of having a user friendly social media policy. And that's one that actively encourages social media use rather than prohibiting it. Because if you don't, then you're just going to fall at the first hurdle. If your employees aren't already aware that posting on social media is okay, then frankly, it won't matter if you effectively communicate the benefits of doing it. And similarly, if you do have one, but it's, not user friendly and it's 20 pages of legal jargon, then nobody will read it. So they might as well just be blissfully unaware anyway. But I'll spare you the lecture because we actually produced a template for a modern social media policy quite recently. So we'll leave that in the show notes for you to explore in your own time. So, the first of April's questions: how does your social media presence impact your objectives and your career? Now, motivating your employees to share company content is subjective because it really depends on your team and what drives you and them personally. Some employees are already bought into the idea of their brand from the moment they wake up to the moment they go to bed, and others respond better to perks and prizes. But that said, one of the more obvious benefits is visibility in the public professional space. So, if you think about it like this, if you imagine you went to a networking event and you were in a room full of people who could either be potential customers, valuable connections, or future employers, even, would you consider that event to have been a success if you didn't say anything to anyone the whole time? And that's not a bad way to think about LinkedIn because it's literally the world's biggest online networking event with over 750 million people attending. And you have the chance to make yourself known to all of them. Um, so why not? Why would you not want to be vocal, and why would you not want to be present if you were actively trying to advance your career and put yourself out there while networking with others in the space? Now, obviously, the mention of getting in front of potential employers might strike fear in the hearts of your leadership team, but it's important to remember that the next job doesn't have to be with another company, because engaging with your company's advocacy program and actively advocating for your organization is actually just a great way to increase your internal visibility. So, whether you're looking for your next internal promotion or not, it's still a great way to network with others within your organization and to get your name and face out there. We did have this really great example from a case study we did a while back, and it's paining me, but I don't want to pause because I wish I'd thought about this beforehand. It's on the tip of my tongue, but I'd love to name it. But essentially, we had a client who had been using gamification to encourage more of their employees to take part in their program. And the form of gamification they were using was leaderboards. So these leaderboards showcase the program's top performers in terms of clicks generated from their shares. And there were two standout performers on the leaderboard. One was the CMO, and the other was a lady from the social media team. So the CMO had been consistently taking first place on the leaderboard until this person from the social media team signed up. They started generating more clicks than the CMO and pipped them to the top spot of the leaderboard on a number of occasions. And now I don't think they appreciated how competitive the CMO was, but they took note of it and set out to reclaim their throne. And to cut a long story short, they had an in person event a while after this, and the CMO pulled this person to the side to have a joke about their competition. Now, obviously, this person from the social team was just blissfully unaware that any of this was going on. So this was all news to her, but nevertheless, through an internal medium that they both used, they were able to connect in real life. I think they connected on LinkedIn and the competition kind of heated up from there. But it's just a great example of how participating in an internal initiative can help you build rapport with others who you might not have had the chance to meet. Now, obviously, that's just one way that it can benefit you internally. But I think we need to focus on the second part of April's first question. Or maybe this is just another way to communicate it. So, one of the benefits for employees posting is discussing how it helps them achieve their own goals. Ultimately, this will be the most effective way of getting people on board because, well, I mean, one of the biggest mistakes you can make when launching a program, as we discussed, is talking about it like it's a company initiative. So, saying things like, sign up and take part and help us spread the word about insert company name. So, if we use Disseminate as the example, if I were to say to the team, help us spread the word about Disseminate, I'm not really helping them achieve their own goals. So, you have to tell them how it makes their lives easier today. You need to really zero in on how posting on social media will help them achieve their current objectives. And I think the best example to use here is salespeople. So, just to give you a real world example, and because salespeople are arguably the biggest beneficiaries of posting on social media. So, salespeople are obviously quota bearing individuals, and part of their role is generating leads and nurturing those leads, starting conversations with these people, and genuinely, there's really no better way of doing that currently than on LinkedIn. If you want to get in front of potential prospects or people that you're already speaking with in a less invasive way than sending a checking in email or whatever it might be, then posting on social media is actually a really great way to do that. And an even better way to get in front of new leads. If we compare it to cold emailing today, I mean, this will resonate with salespeople, I'm sure, but I'm sure you're all familiar, marketers too, with the pain points currently around email open rates, and deliverability and things like that. Because the fact of the matter is, it's one of those things where it's been almost satirized now. My inbox is just absolutely full of cold emails, and I absolutely respect the hustle, but I don't have time to read all of them. So, 9 out of 10 will slip through the net, unfortunately. However, I don't doubt that these people are also connecting with me on LinkedIn. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, so I'm more likely to see them there. So it's quite a long winded example, but if you can communicate that with your salespeople and talk about how this is actually going to help them personally, how this is going to help them do their job better, rather than communicating it as a company initiative, that's ultimately going to be the best way to get them posting more. But that's really what lies in it for every employee, no matter their role. But you can think about how that applies to marketers. As somebody who works in marketing, um, maybe this is quite broad, but a goal of mine might be to increase website traffic by X% by whichever quarter. And I know that posting on social media and sharing our content and links to our website there is going to help us do that. And you better believe that if I know that, I'm going to be asking all of my colleagues to do the same. So again, no matter the role, you will always be able to find a way to communicate how this will help them achieve their own goals. But again, you can also focus on that internal and external visibility within the professional space, because there's so many ways that that can benefit you, whether it's building your personal brand by connecting with other leaders in the space. um, we've seen so many examples where people get invited onto podcasts or asked to attend events through connections that they started just through posting on LinkedIn, because how else are you going to meet these people unless you rock up to these events where they happen to be as well? The chances are much less likely, or it's much less likely, sorry, that will happen. So again, quite long-winded, but hopefully that answers April's first question. The second question April had was, do we have any tips that we can provide to create a posting habit? And the answer to that is yes, we do, but it will vary depending on the individual. So I'm a big advocate of the idea of habit stacking, which I learned and have now stolen from James Clear's book, Atomic Habits. And I'm going to absolutely butcher the explanation, but essentially it's about adding a task, so whatever your desired habit is, to an existing habit that's already part of your routine. So, in layman's terms, if your morning routine is wake up, make coffee, eat breakfast, then habit stacking would be adding to this so that it becomes part of your morning routine. So, wake up, make coffee, eat breakfast, brush teeth. Now, obviously, that's an elaborate example for a B2B podcast, but everyone has somewhat of a morning routine with their job. So for me, it's make coffee, plan out my day, check my Slack notifications and my email. Building on this to create a posting habit, it would be make coffee, plan out my day, check Slack and email, then share a piece of content to LinkedIn using Disseminate. And on that, I think that's probably the most important thing to mention with saying using Disseminate, because it has to be easy, which is why, we've spoken about this on the podcast in the past, but this is why technology and a dedicated platform is such an important element of a successful program. It's another one that I've borrowed from James Clear, and we genuinely have no affiliation with Mr. Clear, but it's just something to become a habit. So, sorry, something that he says in his book is for something to become a habit is it has to be easy. Now, you need employees to have a location where they can find social media posts that are ready to share in a matter of clicks. On the contrary, if you're asking them to make posting to social media part of their day and you're not doing anything to assist them in this task, then the odds of it happening are slim to none. Even comms professionals get writer's block. So you'd absolutely better believe that someone who's not used to posting on social media at all will get writer's block too. Okay, so to summarize April's two questions, the first one was around how does this benefit each employee, and the fact of the matter is, if you want your employees to be posting more on social media, you need to communicate with them how this is going to benefit them personally and how this is going to help them achieve their current objectives. So using salespeople as the example with, it'll help you be seen as a thought leader, it'll help you generate more leads from social media, whatever it might be. With marketers, again, you can use that website traffic example, maybe go a little bit more niche because that was quite broad. But you see where I'm going. You have to zero in on how this benefits them and helps them make their job easier, or helps them, become better at their job and achieve better results. Ultimately, you just have to avoid talking about the company benefits here, because it has to be communicated as an employee-led initiative. And April's second question around how to start a posting habit, I've given you an example there. I would encourage everybody to read the book that we mentioned, although I'm sure I'll get mocked internally now for banging on about it so much. But I'm a big fan of the habit stacking method and just making it part of your routine. So we probably should have spoken about posting frequency, but the reality is there is no silver bullet to the number of times you should be posting on LinkedIn per week. It will vary depending on what your objectives are and really what's comfortable for you. Starting out, you might just want to do 1 day per week, in which case make it part of your Monday morning routine. Whatever you do on a Monday, make that part of your Monday morning routine. We typically suggest posting a couple or 2 to 3 times per week. So my routine is usually Monday, Wednesday, Friday, because you've got a nice gap between each post, so you can kind of let them breathe and maybe generate a bit of engagement before you post your next one. But I make that part of my routine on those days. So to make it part of your routine, then habit stacking is a really great way, of doing that. But ultimately, if you are a program manager listening to this, you're going to know much better what these people's or you'll have a better idea of what these people's days look like. So I'm sure there will be some way that you can make this part of their day, or help them make this part of their day. So even if it's just freeing up that 5 minutes or whatever it is, if you ask them to write their own posts, maybe a little bit longer if you're using technology like the DSMN8, just giving them the 5 minutes a day in their calendar to go and find a post they want to share initially, just so that it becomes part of their routine. And then obviously you can bank on them to do it themselves once they start to see the benefits. So hopefully that's answered April's questions. I'll leave it there, and I'm sure she'll tell me if I haven't answered them effectively, in which case this might never air. But thank you very much for listening. And again, if you do have 6 to 7 minutes to spare, please do fill out that survey in the show notes, because we're so excited with how that's shaping up. But otherwise, thank you very much for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.